Welcome back to the Big Skinny. And this is the time of the show where we live out our be humble or be humbled in the markets motto, because we know we don't know it all. And that's why we always try and bring you compelling guests that can help level us up in areas of the market where we need it or just give us unique insights. And today I'm pleased to introduce you to a young man that I met not long ago that is all in on crypto. Welcome to the Big Skinny for your first and hopefully not even close to your last appearance, Cade Bergmann from Wolf Bitcoin. Glad to have you here, my friend. Well, listen, I'm going to jump right into it because I've been reading some of your recent tweets, and I believe we're of the same conviction here that the crypto world is really consolidating around Bitcoin. Do you agree with that? And what does that mean for Bitcoin's price, even though we're sitting here, relatively close within spitting distance of all-time highs?
Yeah, I would definitely say for the last year, and honestly, up until very recently, I don't even think an altcoin even crept in my brain for a few months there. I completely forgot some of them existed actually because it's been all Bitcoin led, and it's certainly from the institutions as well. All of them came flooding in, and we were like, okay, great, all this momentum, this volume, retail's coming in. They're coming in. They're going to grab some of these small caps. I know you're loving those, and so people were like, they're going to come. Of course they are. But then the
Yeah.
attention and money actually ended up just flowing into Bitcoin, and then slowly over the last few months, more and more news comes out. Trump is saying, hey, we're buying Ethereum. We have Trump's son saying, buying Ethereum. And everyone's like, I don't know, this chart's not really showing like it's got any strength. That this is going to be a Bitcoin-led rally. And then in the last few months, we started to see them start to rally and see some outperformance against Bitcoin, actually. And so that's been actually really fascinating. But from an institutional perspective, I do still believe, and that's why we actually rebranded from Wolf Crypto to Wolf Bitcoin, that it is going to continue to be Bitcoin-led because there are some fundamentals around Bitcoin as an asset that I believe set it apart from the rest of the industry.
So what are those? Because look, I agree. If I look at the crypto strategy thing, I think everything is going to trade eventually. That digital asset treasury strategy is going to be everything trades towards a 1 times MNAV around Bitcoin because it's going to be the most liquid, most in demand. But you tell us, because I'm a crypto neophyte here. I know next to nothing. What are the fundamentals that lead you to believe Bitcoin is going to be the main consolidation play for crypto?
Yeah, so honestly, with this, to keep it just keep it high level with Bitcoin, um, the biggest argument you see from a lot of the crypto tokens out there, and it's tough to make the argument because there is some tech out there that's pretty compelling. The issue is when you bring in and introduce a token into the ecosystem, and then all the attention becomes about the play. Is this going to go up? Is it going to go down? It becomes a speculative game. With Bitcoin, it's still like that because, of course, it's an asset. People are speculating on the price, but there are some fundamental characteristics of Bitcoin that got me to think, why are all these billionaires dumping irrational amounts of their net worth? But not into Ethereum or Solana, but just into Bitcoin. There must be a factor in here that I'm missing, and that's when I started to poke in a little bit. Some of the easy ones. Some people are going to have heard this a million times. Some people are going to hear it for the first time in regards to Bitcoin, but there is a limited supply. So basically, what you're seeing is Bitcoin being priced in at like $120,000 or something as this piece of tech, this asset that is sort of fundamentally representing a bit of freedom money. It is a money that kind of started out of nowhere. It was kind of this thing that was sort of against the culture, and then over time, the price just kept going up, and people were saying why. And the more people that found out and learned about Bitcoin say, hey, there's limited supply here. Hey, you can't just print more of this like another asset we all are aware of. There's actually something really compelling about sound money into the conversation that we could probably talk about with Bitcoin. And over the years, it went from a little bit of a joke to the point where now it's like, okay, how long can you keep not really taking it seriously? At what price point does Bitcoin need to get to where you're like, okay, maybe this needs to be a conversation we have, because I really haven't seen it happen up until the last couple of years of people discussing currencies and calling into question the dollar, really up until Bitcoin started to trend into this 6-digit territory.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, if we go back to the great China boom back in the early 2000s, where everyone was saying that the yuan or the renminbi was going to replace the dollar as the reserve currency, that was never going to happen. But that was when those conversations started. And I think you're right. This adoption, I think we featured, Tom Lee had a quote saying, like, never in the history of the world has an asset grown to 2 trillion in market cap and then suddenly disappeared. So what is fundamentally better for Bitcoin to be that digital currency, reserve currency versus Ethereum? Is it simply a difference in the supply? Is it a difference in the speed of the blockchain underlying it? What are the pros and cons if someone's looking at this from Bitcoin versus Ethereum? Or is it more of a case as an investor, you go, you need to own some of both because there are pros and cons for each and you're just not sure?
Yeah, I would say ultimately it depends on what kind of investor you are. I had just had a conversation with one of my family friends, and we kind of dove into the conversation around Bitcoin and Ethereum. And at the end of it, he was like, "Okay, I can kind of see the difference here of assets, but I don't really understand Bitcoin. I don't really fundamentally agree that maybe this is helping society in the way that I like to put my money in for investing. And he was like, so even though I understand it and I even agree in some ways, I'm not really gonna put my money here. So I understand that from an investing perspective. But when you're pairing up Bitcoin and Ethereum, there's one fundamental characteristic that I think is probably the most top of line. For the crypto folks, they probably have heard a million times, but to the stock investors, it's probably worth hearing again, is the proof of work nature. Ethereum ended up moving from proof of work to proof of stake in the last few years, which was huge for crypto, and everyone was super excited in the beginning. I remember this is so great. It's going to be faster. There's all these things that happen because you're proof of stake. But then there was another conversation, which is what are you leaving behind by becoming now proof of stake and leaving behind proof
Yeah.
of work?
So
Which
I got to
makes
back you up here because
yeah,
when you
please.
say when you say proof of stake, I'm thinking of like my dinner at Del Frisco's last night,
Yeah,
the steak in
of
front of me.
course.
So explain, and I know there's probably other people here. So explain in simple terms for us newbies, proof of work versus proof of stake in a way that's a fourth grader could get it.
Of course. So proof of stake. So essentially, with the currency conversation, how I'd mentioned, it's relatively easy to print more dollars into the system. It seems too easy. And with a lot of these currencies, those are kind of the main things people are worried about. And that is the main thing that proof of work is there to stop. And there's about these Bitcoin halvings where every few years it gets harder to mine Bitcoin. And so that's the whole conversation around proof of work. It's just like, hey, there's a new currency, there's more coming out, but it actually takes a considerable amount of work, money, and effort and electricity to make it happen. Versus proof of stake, there's some things you can spin up and make happen that I always can't account for. It gets a little bit uncomfortable for me. So if I was going to put my money into an asset and say, hey, in 200 years, this isn't going to change. This code is here. This is set. This is something I can believe in long term. That's where I would put my money into Bitcoin before I put it into any other altcoin, really.
So the proof of work, in grossly simplified terms, is more believable, transparent, and trustworthy than a proof of stake system because the costs are going up. There's more validation that's going to. Is that? I mean,
It
is that
also just makes
oversimplified
sense.
too much?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
from an oversimplified way, you can walk away with that, yes. And it also just
Yeah.
makes sense long term. If you're going to keep this thing sustainable as an asset that people are going to be using, if you want it to be something like digital gold, I think there are different ways you could use the other currencies, but I think for Bitcoin, it's the most compelling for me. It's the only one that I could probably say for the next 100 years, I know will be here. Every other crypto, it's just a little bit more in the air. It's just harder to know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those altcoins as well. On a previous episode, we did crypto or crap, and there's some crazy ones out there. So I don't think they'll be around in 100 years. Here's a question for you. So all that in mind of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and these other coins, how do you invest? I mean, you had a recent tweet, which I love, by the way. I've always been a high conviction, low number of investment investor that you got to go all in with conviction. Forget diversification to create wealth. I mean, what brought you to that realization? And does that mean you're all in on Bitcoin and nothing else? Or, if you don't want to share that, no worries.
No, I will.
How would
It's all
you
good.
approach it?
Sure. So that was for me a bit of a rolling realization, I guess, over the last year or so. And like last year and a half, I had grown into this position of Wolf Crypto, now Wolf Bitcoin. And from every aspect of my life, I noticed every big jump required a big leap of faith. And after that leap of faith, it required all in for a little while, a lot of pain for a little while, and then usually at the end of it, something would come from it. But I very rarely found that life changes came from diversifying anything. And so even when I was looking into conversation of like, where do I put my money? I'm a bit older now, I'm 26. The conversation around money is different. It's not, can I buy this watch tomorrow? It's like, hey, can I take care of a family? Because that is kind of my priority. And so because that, my focus has changed with my investing as well. I'm like, where am I going to put my money? Where do I feel safe having worked and earned all this money to put it into something that I feel good about and believe in? For me, that's been Bitcoin. And slowly that went from a 20% stake to 40%, 70%. And now I'm sitting around 90%, which feels pretty insane. But it feels right. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So we will see how it all ends up
Yeah.
playing out. I will say I'm 26. So in my head, if it all goes wrong, I'll pick up the pieces and start again tomorrow.
Hey, listen, man, I love nothing ventured, nothing gained. I can tell you at not 26, at closer to 48, some of my best wealth generating ideas have been when I've been 50, 60, 70%
Wow.
concentrated in a single investment. And look, this came out. We've got a question here from you from Nightlight Video. Ether, Solana, and others have other use cases that are valuable beyond Bitcoin that would scale the crypto ecosystem. So, how do you answer a question like that? There's other ones that have use cases that might be more limited but helpful. Does that mean the world can coexist with multiple cryptos, or how do you view that? Answer this question.
Realistically, probably, yeah, they will probably be multiple that exist. I think for me, the most compelling argument for Bitcoin is it was the first. It came because of the 2008 crash. That's where it came from. The other ones, it's hard to know really why they were started. Maybe it was truly there was a tech opportunity, but as soon as the currencies got introduced and the tokens became introduced, it really muddied up the waters there. So I would say yes, there probably is some good use cases. Unfortunately, I don't know if that always plays a part and matters almost when you're factoring in the price of a lot of these tokens. It's hard to know where the value comes from.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Listen, man, we've got another guest we got to get to, but I want to make sure you're willing to come back because I know your depth and understanding here goes a lot deeper. I just want to introduce our audience again to getting used to crypto. Another compelling case here. Encourage everyone. You can learn way more from Cade at 26 wise years old than you can from old Lou Basenese here at 47. Follow him on socials at Wolf Bitcoin and Cade Bergmann. I think you got a YouTube channel too. There's going to be more content that you can consume. And Cade, would love to have you back soon.
We'd love to come back. Thank you so much, Lou.